Welcome back to another episode of the Magic Latest Podcast, where we discuss everything Orlando Magic. I'm your host, Jalon Dixon, and today we're going to get into some more NBA analyst thoughts on the Desmond Bane trade. A Kobe White trade package was revealed. We're going to grade that trade package and ask ourselves, would we rather have done that for Kobe White or done the deal that was done for Desmond Bane instead? And last, we're going to cap off our perfect pick series for the NBA draft with the pick at 25 by focusing on yet another draft pick prospect that could be really interesting in that late first round. Let's go ahead and get right into it. So NBA champion Draymond Green gave his thoughts on the Memphis Grizzlies trading the Magic, Desmond Bane, and more particularly took to the side of what the Orlando Magic did, saying 4 unprotected first-round picks and a pick swap, that's a lot. So when I saw the trade, I was like, man, that's a lot. And I like Bane. He saw that Anthony Parker, the Orlando Magic's GM, reported that there was something said that basically along the lines of saying when he would build a perfect NBA basketball player, he would use Desmond Bane as the muse for that. Draymond Green, of course, gave pushback saying, I saw that quote. And I said, oh, okay, that's why he gave up so much. But if I go into the lab and I create a basketball player, I'm going to create Kevin Durant or LeBron James or like a 6'6" dude with Steph Curry's jump shot. Desmond Bane is 6'5" with a 6'4" wingspan or 6'2" or something of that nature. I'm not going into the lab and creating Desmond Bane with all due respect. I'm not going to create a basketball player with short arms. All right. So of course, Desmond Bane is a player that, although, you know, Draymond Green says he likes him as a player, we also have to remember that the Memphis Grizzlies have had quite their fair share of battles with teams like the Lakers and the Golden State Warriors over the last couple of seasons. So of course, Draymond Green also has his thoughts on a player like Desmond Bane. Yes, I will agree. Desmond Bane, in terms of the perfect player you would build in an NBA lab, okay, we're obviously getting a little bit hasty there. Desmond Bane is not the perfect NBA player you would build in a lab if you were talking about, even if it was just the guy you would want to build perfectly for this basketball team, right? If you wanted to build the perfect player for the Orlando Magic at the point guard position next to a Jalen Suggs or maybe to play the 2 guard, you would basically take LaMelo Ball, fuse him with Lonzo Ball, and put him on the Orlando Magic, right? A high-level defender who can shoot the 3 ball at a high clip, but has real offensive chops as a shot creator, as a guy who can pass the ball at a high level, get the ball passed around to shooters, and get guys in the right spot, things of that nature, right? You would take somebody like that, or you would take what Desmond Bane does as an off-the-ball operator and as a guy who can operate on ball last season, and you fuse that like with the attributes of Drew Holiday, right? These are the perfect basketball players in terms of guys that you would build, even just for the Orlando Magic. That's actually interesting. Let me know in the comment section who your perfect player build would either be based off of, a fusion of 2 different kinds of guys, or just like a combination of different attributes that you guys think would be the build of a perfect basketball player. Because it's actually really interesting. I think Draymond Green, although it might come off as hate, I think is actually kind of spot on here. Clearly, the Orlando Magic gave up as much as they did with the thought in mind that this guy just fit everything that the GM saw as like the ideal basketball player in his mind. And that's fine. You're willing to overplay you're willing to overplay your hand. You're willing to overpay for a guy if you know that's a guy that you're like, yes, he's going to be a missing piece on this team, that when he lands on our roster, it changes everything for us, right? It's the same thing for if you were to trade up in the draft. If you're at 9 and you're trading all the way up to 3, you're not trading all the way from 9 to 3 or from 12 to top 5 to just go get any random Joe Schmo. You're taking a swing on a guy who you think, if you get him in our program, in our organization, this guy is going to be a difference maker in a real way out the gate. And I'm not going to lie to you. If that's what Orlando thinks that Desmond Bane is, you take that swing. You do that move immediately with no hesitation, which makes sense because, I mean, shoot, they did it during the NBA Finals. Usually teams wait until afterwards. Clearly, that's not even the case anymore, given the fact that as of when this episode is recorded, Kevin Durant got traded to the Houston Rockets on the day of Game 7 of the NBA Finals. So anything and everything can be said about the way the NBA offseason is off to a hot start. Draymond Green is not wrong necessarily about his thoughts when it comes to the perfect player build and things of that nature. So this is obviously an interesting conversation. I think Draymond Green didn't mean anything malicious behind it. I think he just views it as a hefty package for a player who is a good player, maybe a high upside player, but maybe a hefty package for a player who's not your ideal superstar candidate. A la what we said about Mikal Bridges when the New York Knicks traded for him, right? So makes a lot of sense. But you guys let me know in the comment section. Two different things. Who would be your most ideal player build if you could make your own NBA player? 2K style, of course, right? And second, do you guys agree? Is Draymond Green right here on the head with it? With the idea that, you know what? The Desmond Bane trade package was a lot for a player of his caliber. You guys let me know in the comment section down below. Next, we're going to talk about a player, a former player who thinks the opposite of Draymond Green, which actually he says that the Desmond Bane trade was actually the perfect storm. More specifically, the FanDuel show Run It Back has former NBA player Chandler Parsons on it, and he said that this was actually the perfect time for the Orlando Magic to strike and go after a player like Desmond Bane, considering that with that kind of roster, they can be in real contention in an open Eastern Conference. What he exactly said was it was the perfect storm for Orlando. They're desperate for shooting. They have no money going forward. So a guy like Desmond Bane who can come in, that's under contract, can provide that shooting off Wagner, off of Paolo Banchero, off of Jalen Suggs. They have that core. The bench is still going to be a concern here. Their future is going to be a concern here, giving up so many assets, so many picks moving forward. But he's under contract for a lot of money. He's not going anywhere. They do feel like the East is wide open, and this kind of makes them better, which I agree with right now. I think this could be good. I think he kind of cooked there. And it's one of those things where it's kind of interesting because they kind of did the opposite of what the New York Knicks just did with letting go of Tom Thibodeau and conversations around Karl-Anthony Towns spurring up for him potentially being traded, right? Because what they did was essentially they looked at the open Eastern Conference and they're like, we need to improve the coaching space immediately. We need a talent upgrade immediately, right? And they did so in a way where it's almost going to be addition by subtraction, when in reality, what got you as far as you did, which was the Eastern Conference Finals, was in a much tougher version of the Eastern Conference. This is almost kind of the equivalent to like when you look at the Knicks, it's like the equivalent to like when the Toronto Raptors got rid of their head coach and on top of that, moved off of DeMar DeRozan in the same offseason. Now, they ended up winning the championship off a swing of getting Kawhi Leonard. So maybe that's what the New York Knicks are using the game plan off of. But I look at Orlando and I say they were a team that was lethal and really pushed in the first round this past postseason. And were even very dangerous last postseason. You add a knockdown shooter with some on-ball creation. You're healthier if you have Jalen Suggs, Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, all healthy, right? And you go into a postseason like that, they pushed the Knicks with those guys not even playing their best basketball and missing that top-level shooter. You add Desmond Bane, and let's be real, the Knicks, Indiana Pacers, a healthy Philadelphia 76ers are probably like the three top considered teams. Milwaukee is probably somewhere in 4 or 5, and I think that you still have to consider Boston as a high-level top 5 team in the Eastern Conference, even without Jason Tatum, if they don't trade everybody, right? And even if they do trade Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, I do think they can get high-level contributors back. So I think that, hilariously enough, I am right there with Chandler Parsons personally. I actually do think this was the perfect time to make a swing like this because there's not going to be too many opportunities where the Eastern Conference is this open. And we've seen that when the Eastern Conference has its chances to kind of open the Red Sea, the Atlanta Hawks made the Eastern Conference Finals a few seasons ago. The Indiana Pacers are in the NBA Finals in Game 7 with a chance to win the title. There's a chance that when this episode drops, the Indiana Pacers take out the Oklahoma City Thunder, who were title favorites, or at least a top 3 title favorite coming into the postseason. That, like, anything can happen if the dominoes fall in your favor, and the Orlando Magic are just striking while the iron's hot. It's funny, his co-host Lou Williams actually doubled down on this. He says, I don't think they gave up too much. You don't know what the future holds. Right now, what Desmond Bane is going to bring to the table for you, especially with the injuries that they had last season, They needed somebody to score the basketball in the absence of Paolo and Wagner at some point. Bane, that gives you more depth in your backcourt, and now you've got another guy that can go out there and give you 20 points on any given night. He's a defender. He's a tough-nosed guy. So again, you can hedge your bets on your future, or you can give yourself an opportunity to compete in the Eastern Conference right now. And I think that's a perfect framework for it. At the end of the day, the phrase that needs to be associated with the Orlando Magic this summer is strike while the iron is hot. The Orlando Magic right now are walking into the Eastern Conference arguably with the best starting five in the East. Arguably with the most complete starting five in the Eastern Conference, with Desmond Bane, Jalen Suggs, Paulo Banchero, Franz Wagner, and then having Wendell Carter Jr. at the center position. With Jonathan Isaac, still Goga Bitadze as of right now, Anthony Black, all coming off the bench, right? You're in a really good position right now. You still have Tristan DeSilva, who can improve next season as well. Like, you have a good 8 to 9 man rotation, and you definitely have one of the best starting fives, if not the best starting five, in the Eastern Conference right now. You're right up there with the Cleveland Cavaliers probably as the best starting five. An argument can be made for the New York Knicks, and obviously the Indiana Pacers are kind of proving themselves right now, but I think they're obviously winning a lot more with depth more than anything. So there's questions there as well. But I would say that, like, they're right there. So like I said, I think the perfect phrase that you have to associate with this offseason when talking about the Orlando Magic is striking while the iron is hot. And I think they've done a great job, a really, really great job of doing that. So with that being the case, I lean more with Chandler Parsons than I lean with Draymond Green. I don't think the Draymond Green create player thing, right there with you. But in terms of them giving up a lot for Desmond Bane, 2020 hindsight will be the answer to this. What they do over the next 2 to 3 seasons while Desmond Bane is on a long-term contract and all 4 of these guys are locked up long-term going into 2028, 2029, that will be the deciding factor as to whether or not this was too much, just enough, or maybe not enough if Desmond Bane messes around and make an all-star team or an all-NBA defensive team or something crazy like that, right? Only time will tell. But I actually agree with Chandler Parsons and Lou Williams on this one. I actually think that this is a much better trade than people are giving it credit. I think that this could be a much more productive trade year one than a lot of people are giving it credit. And I think when you look at the landscape of the Eastern Conference right now, the Orlando Magic have to be considered. We talked about this last episode. They have to be considered as a top 4 team in the East. They have to be considered as a top 2 team potentially in the Eastern Conference with the way things are currently landscaped. Especially when you think about Desmond Bane adding what he adds, the New York Knicks potentially clipping this offseason just for financial reasons. The Boston Celtics have to address their roster for financial reasons. Milwaukee might be without Giannis Antetokounmpo, and they're definitely going to start the season off without Damian Lillard. Indiana is going to be a strong team, but they've had their slow starts for the last couple of seasons, right? Detroit, they could be a flash-in-the-pan team, or they could be a team that builds off of what they did last year. We don't know what to talk about when it comes to the Philadelphia 76ers. There's so many unknowns. But with Orlando, they're pretty constant. They just upgraded at their biggest need. So I'm right there with them. I'm not going to say I'm the biggest proponent of this trade. I think there's a couple of other interesting guys they could have went after. But I think that when you look at the framework of the trade, why they did the trade, what they were willing to give up for the trade, I think at least 9 times out of 10, I would do this trade again if I was the Orlando Magic. But some will say that with this Kobe White package being announced recently, you have to tip the scale and ask yourself, just how confident are you in that ideology of taking Desmond Bane as opposed to Kobe White? Here's where I'll give the pushback. The pushback is that the Kobe White trade offer was the Orlando Magic were going to give up Cole Anthony, Jonathan Isaac, 2 first-round picks, and a pick swap. That's interesting. The pushback is, I'm not crazy about giving up Jonathan Isaac if I'm Orlando. I'm much more open to giving up Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who had a really down shooting year last year. Definitely is not, well, at least last season, was not the defender he's been in years past, especially not the championship Lakers or when he was with the Denver Nuggets for that championship run as well. Definitely was not that level of defender last season. And on top of that, if I'm being honest, and the reason why the trade probably didn't go through is probably because the Chicago Bulls thought this was ridiculous. And I would say that the reason why the Chicago Bulls probably thought this was ridiculous is because if you look at what the Orlando Magic just gave up for Desmond Bane, I would give the you would probably say, in my personal opinion, as somebody who follows the Bulls pretty heavily outside of covering the Orlando Magic, in my personal opinion, I think Kobe White's a better player. I think Kobe White's a better player than Desmond Bane. And so what I think is that they got the game mixed up. I think that those multiple first round picks, those 4 first round picks futures, the 14th this year being included in that, Kentavious Caldwell Pope, Cole Anthony, right? And if I'm Chicago, I probably would have wanted Jonathan Isaac instead of Kentavious Caldwell Pope in this trade. But mainly the draft compensation, the 4 first round picks, including this year's pick at 14. I would have wanted that. The Memphis Grizzlies settled on taking Kentavious Caldwell Pope because of the kind of draft capital they were getting back of 4 first round picks. No pick swaps in that, by the way. 4 unprotected first round picks. So you get 2 guys who are real rotational players and 4 unconditional first round picks versus, yes, still 2 rotational guys, but in this case, you're getting kind of dubbed because only 2 of the first round picks are solidified and the other one's a pick swap. In a situation where, honestly, Chicago moving forward is probably going to want to keep their pick. They're not going to want to switch with Orlando. I don't think they're going to be worse than, I don't think they think they're going to be better than Orlando in the immediate future. So, my personal opinion is, would the Orlando Magic probably have liked Kobe White more than Desmond Bane on this team? Probably. But if I'm the Chicago Bulls, would I have accepted this trade package? No. If I'm the Chicago Bulls, would I have accepted the trade package that you gave Memphis? Yes. And so I think that's what happened. I think that's what happened with the Chicago Bulls. They felt like they got lowballed. Also, let's also be very transparent here. I also think the Chicago Bulls are just tired of inadvertently building the Orlando Magic. Let's think about it. The Chicago Bulls are the reason that Franz Wagner, the Franz Wagner pick for Orlando, that's their pick. Wendell Carter Jr. is on that team, right? That's 2 of their starting 5 right there. You're going to give them your starting point guard and Kobe White on top of that to be next to Jalen Suggs, next to Franz Wagner, Wendell Carter, and Paolo Banchero? Basically that should allow every Chicago Bulls fan to inadvertently be an Orlando Magic fan by default, because it's basically your front office is basically just building the Orlando Magic from the ground up. Let's be honest. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Chicago Bulls tried to lowball a little bit in this situation out of the mere fact that, Orlando Magic tried to lowball them because of the fact that they've been in so many interactions. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Chicago Bulls felt like, hey, bro, we're tired of getting fleeced by y'all. But you guys let me know. Would you guys have rather that trade package for Kobe White if the Bulls said yes? Because I think it was more the Bulls saying no than Orlando not thinking thinking straight. Because this is what Orlando offered the Bulls. I think this had more to do with the Bulls hanging up the phone than it was Orlando was like, this is all we can give you, right? So would you rather Kobe White for this trade package if the Bulls said yes, or Desmond Bane for the trade package they gave up? Let me know in the comment section down below. A lot of questions of the day, man. Interesting podcast today, man. But we're actually going to end on another really interesting question, which continues/ends off our perfect prospect series for the Orlando Magic. We're only like 72 hours or so away from the NBA draft, so we're not going to get too many more prospects. But we're going to go with the last interesting guy that I thought would be somebody to consider at 25, and that's Liam McNeely. I think he could be a sneaky pick at 25 because I think a lot of people are lower on him coming into the draft, given the fact that he didn't have the best season as a shot creator at UConn as many expected coming out of Montverde. I think he's still one of the best three-point shooters in the draft. I think it's him and Jace Richardson, who I thought would be a perfect prospect for this series. But personally, I also just don't think that Jace is going to fall at 25. At 14, he would have been a great prospect to discuss, but I think at 25, Jace Richardson is going to be off the board. But Liam McNeely might be a very good consolation prize if you're looking for a knockdown shooter, a guy who could come in and just, work off the spot. He can play next to a guy next like Franz. He can play next to Paulo. He can be a good offensive hub next to Jalen Suggs. You can still have two knockdown shooters. He can play next to Desmond Bane. He's just a good fit. He's just a good fit in general. I think he's a guy who can just slot in. He's going to give you 15 to 18 minutes a night of just being a high-level contributor. And that's why I think he could be a sneaky pick. He's not the highest upside guy of the guys that we discussed throughout this series, but he's a dude that I think that if he gets to the right situation, where all he has to do is be this knockdown shooter, put the ball on the floor, get a couple mid-rangers here and there, but he operates as your, I hate to say stereotypical white guy shooter type, but if he can be your Kyle Korver, he can be your JJ Redick, he can be, there's a handful of different guys. He could be Corey Kispert even, right? I think that's an interesting comp for him. Corey Kispert for the Washington Wizards, who's a guy who can put the ball on the floor a little bit more, but is more known for what he can do as a three-point shooter and as a floor spacer for Washington. If Liam McNeely can come into Orlando and be Corey Kispert, that's a really good pick at 25. Corey Kispert was a lottery pick for the Washington Wizards, right? So that could be a really, really sneaky, solid pick at 25. I think a lot of people are lower on him when he can actually be a guy that I think in the right situation could be a day one contributor. You guys let me know if Liam McNeely is a sneaky pick at 25 or who you guys would prefer to be taken at pick 25 instead if you have somebody else in mind. But that's going to be everything for this edition of the Orlando Magic Latest. I'm not going to lie to you guys. This is going to be a crazy, crazy offseason. So many thoughts on the Desmond Bane trade is still flowing in. So many other theories of potential trades that could have been made for other point guards and other shooting guards are probably going to continue to leak out as more trades and acquisitions are made, signing starts in this offseason. And we're going to be keeping up with everything Orlando Magic all offseason long. So stay tuned for that. But until next time,